Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. It's a Friday night edition, and all the way from Saturday, Graham Nicholls is joining us. He living in the future right now. Okay, we're going to find out if I'm alive tomorrow or not. We'll find out here momentarily. But we're going to talk about out-of-body experiences and how to do it. He's one of the best in the world, and this is why we got him on this show. But the best part about this show so far early on here is we get to say hello to each and every one of you in our YouTube channel. We say hello to Kitty Caddywhack in the gold medal position. Race Fan with a silver. Amy Allo with a bronze medal tonight, a strong bronze. As we kick off roll call with Roswell Alien. How you doing? T-Bone, my man, you're back. How have you been? Did you take a little vacay somewhere? Did you get lost in Delta or Richmond or Surrey? Is that what happened? Trying to find the taco time and got lost? It happens. I know it happens. I've done it. Luscious Jules, how are you tonight as we kick off roll call, necessary dialogue? Thanks for coming on in. Maker of Stuff, how you doing? Welcome. And scrolling on down, we say hello to Michael Morris, our attorney at large. How you doing, buddy? Mama Catherine. Mwah. Mama Catherine will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. If you don't give her a hug, she's not signing for you. Yeah, that's in her contract. I read it 3 times just to make sure. Give her a hug, she'll sign for you. Moving on down, we have next on our list, Tartar Sauce. How you doing? Nice to see you. And Little Cam on YouTube, all excited about tonight's show. Rode 258 miles on the stationary bike in 23 minutes. His legs are jacked. He's ready. Jerence Carter, how are you? Nice to have you here as we scroll on down and say hello to Aussie Boss Tiger. Aussie Tiger will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. All right, let's say hello and good morning to Skip to Malou in Denmark. Thomas Rock, how you doing? Sharon Sunshine, sent over by B. Arthur from the Paranormal Portal podcast. We love B. Arthur. You got to subscribe to his channel. He's amazing, an amazing host. So make sure you do that if you haven't already. Desert Rat, how you doing? J. True Seeker, nice to see you. Broski, also from B. Arthur's channel. Nice to have you here. And who is next? Signs of Life. Ozzy Ange, nice to have you both here. Erica Stover. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Scrolling on down, and Erica Stover again. Yep. And Fap Nuts, how you doing? The cheap Temu version of Grape Nuts with Wilford Brimley. We got Fap Nuts here. Good to have you here. Matthew Goodka, how you doing? Paul H., nice to see you. Otherwise known as Les Paul Holland. Lucky Gypsy over on Twitch, how are you? That's actually Kitty Caddywhack there. And who else is here? My brother, Eugene Braxton. Yes, this is going to be an awesome show. I know you love this topic, Eugene. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. I guarantee you. Scrolling on down, next we say hello to Tyler 420. How are you? Chris. Hold on. Let me get the radio side going here. Oh, my God. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're going to be talking about out-of-body experiences. Graham Nicholls is our guest. We're going to get to him momentarily. GrahamNichols.com. Good website. He's got nice hair. That always goes well. You know, we like good hair around here. Yep. He's got that old school hair. It's just nice and it's there. You'll see it in a minute. You will. Let's see here. What are we doing here? We're in roll call on our YouTube side. I'm feeling a little loopy tonight. It's awesome. I haven't even done anything. Just drank water and iced tea. Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And of course, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. Teen, how you doing? Nice to have you here. And let's get going. Throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears to what's that really happening next. We're together, friends. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have an amazing show tonight because we are literally going right into out-of-body experiences. I'm going to be honest with you. This topic scares the bejesus out of me. It really does. I don't know why, but it just does. And I just really, really want to get into it. Graham Nicholls is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We'll get to him momentarily. In hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will kick things off. Then right after that, we are going to have little Terry Hall and his beautiful mustache come on in for the Q&A, filling in for Lee Strauss tonight. All right, with that in mind, it's time for the show. Graham Nicholls is an English author, lecturer, and advisory board member of the Rhine Research Center, recognized as one of the leading modern practitioners and researchers of out-of-body experiences, otherwise known as OBEs. He began experiencing OBEs in 1987 when Guns N' Roses, Paradise City, and Appetite for Destruction were released to the world and changed my life forever. And since then, he has become known for having some of the most thoroughly documented and independently verified cases on record. His work includes participation in studies conducted by the Research Center, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and collaborative research with biologist Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. He is an author of Avenues of the Human Spirit and Navigating the Out-of-Body Experience. We're going to have a good time tonight because we're going to navigate through this show. Graham Nicholls, good morning to you. The big question that I have for you to kick things off, since you live in the future, am I alive tomorrow?
I certainly hope so.
It's a Good start. That's a good start. Because you're literally, I think, about 9 hours, 8 or 9 hours ahead of me. So you get to see it before I do. Thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio again. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's good to be on here.
Talk about your involvement. Let's go back to 1987. Your first out-of-body experience. What happened there?
I basically was around 12 years old at the time, and I was just relaxing one afternoon, and suddenly I went into a kind of trance state, a natural trance state. I wasn't asleep, but I did go into this sort of altered state, and then the next thing I knew, I found myself maybe half a mile from where I was physically, floating vertically in the air around 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and everything was completely vivid and realistic. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was happening. I recognized where I was. It was essentially near where I went to school at the time, and I just experienced being there, and then a few moments later I was back in my body. So they were very brief experiences, but they were so vivid and unlike anything else I'd ever experienced that they stayed with me, obviously. And then when I heard about the topic, it kind of led me to research it more and to learn to induce it, essentially.
Now, how old were you when this happened?
I was around 11 or 12.
Oh my goodness, that had to scare the daylights out of you.
Funny enough, it didn't really scare me. It just, I guess, confused me. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to call it. I had no reference point. I'd never heard of such a thing. So it wasn't until later that I discovered that there was a phenomena called out-of-body experiences or astral projection, etc. So yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people do talk about fear and that side of things, but it wasn't something that I had. I guess I'd had other paranormal experiences when I was even younger, from around 5 years old, seeing an apparition, for example, which did genuinely terrify me. So I had other things happen. So in a sense, it was somewhat a part of my reality already by the time I was by the time I was 12 or so.
When you were literally floating and out of body at this time, how conscious were you to what was going on?
Do you mean around me physically or where I was? I had no awareness of my physical body or my surroundings. I was completely aware of being in the other location, the location of being near my school, etc. So yeah, it was a complete disconnection from my physical body.
As kids, we have kind of an open imagination on many things. In fact, I remember as a youngster, it was a long time ago. I think things were just coming out of black and white television back then, and life was starting to become in color instead of black and white. I remember having dreams as a kid, flapping my arms so I could fly, because I always wanted to fly. And in my dreams, I could make myself fly anywhere I wanted. Now, I never strayed too far from home because, when you're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, mom and dad are absolutely everything. You want to be around them. So I never went too far, but, I don't know how I would react being 11, 12 and all of a sudden, not being able to know where my body was.
I guess I didn't as such see it like that I was sort of separate to my body. In a lot of ways, it felt almost like I was physically at another location. The only thing that told me that it wasn't an ordinary experience or whatever is just that I had this sudden experience, that I was suddenly somewhere else where I knew I obviously hadn't been moments earlier. And then there was the side of it that I was off the ground, which obviously was extremely unusual. So it was more those elements, but I felt the same as I did normally, and I felt like I was physical, essentially. I didn't feel like I was in some spirit body or anything like that. It literally felt like I was physically at this other location, just able to kind of float above the ground. I mean, most of the time, I would say the distinction is quite, it isn't as clear as you might imagine that I'm actually out of body. Like even now, when I have an experience, it feels like the same as it does right now talking to you. It's just that I'm in this different environment. It's just now that I very rarely experience a energy body or a secondary body kind of experience. It tends to be more like I'm a field of consciousness or a traveling orb or something of that nature most of the time. Not always, but most of the time.
Did anybody in your family have these type of experiences for you to lean on when it happened, or was this something completely new?
It was something completely new. My family were very ordinary, working class British people. They weren't religious. I would say my dad was lent towards being an atheist, or actually leaned towards thinking that we were created by aliens or something along those lines. That was more his take on things. My mum was just not really interested in anything along these kind of lines. So they were both not really, definitely wasn't an interest, anything paranormal really.
Right.
So I just, anything religious or paranormal. So I just was completely on my own in that. But they were interesting in that they were open-minded, and I did talk to them about it, and they showed interest, and they didn't dismiss it all. They were open to it, which was probably different to a lot of people's experience with their parents, I guess.
So when you had that conversation about what happened, did they understand, or did they tell you, "Oh, it was just a dream, honey. It's just a dream. Don't worry about it"?
Well, I don't think I spoke to them about it right from the very first experiences. I spoke to
Right.
them about it after I learned to induce it, which was probably sort of 2 years later. So I think that's when I really talked to them about it. And by that point, I was able to do it in a more consistent way. So they were more interested and more open to it at that point, I think.
Did you look at this entire phenomena right off the bat as something that you needed to discover? Like, what pushed you to the point after that first experience that you needed to look into this more?
It wasn't immediate because, like I said, I didn't even know what to call it. I had no reference point for that kind of experience. So I think it was only when I actually heard the term, which I don't recall now where I heard the term, but I did discover that there was a thing called out-of-body experiences. And that led me to buy a book on the subject. And then I became really interested in it, and I read everything I could find on astral projection and
Right.
parapsychology, esoteric ideas, literally like everything I could find. Like I just kind of read everything.
So, how old were you at that point when you decided to start looking into the out of body experiences?
I was 14 at that point.
That's a big decision to make at such, and pardon my, I don't want to sound rude, but for such an immature age, because so much
Mm.
more is going on with puberty and school and girls and everything that kind of affects you as you enter the teenage years. I mean, for you to have that ability to do that, I think that's pretty commendable.
Yeah, I was kind of I guess I was unusual in some ways. I wasn't big on school. For being from quite a rough neighborhood, I guess, and growing up in an environment where maybe education wasn't that much of a focus. My dad was a dustman, garbage man, I guess you would call it, not sure. But yeah, so there was no focus on education or expectation of going in a direction of education. So in many ways, I wasn't too focused on school. I was more focused on the things I was passionate and interested in, so that's sort of how it went. So I became very devoted to this particular topic. I became like fascinated by it, even from that age. And I was lucky as well, because I met a mentor, a teacher essentially, who was teaching it in London. He was doing lectures and things, and I started attending his lectures. And then essentially he sort of took me under his wing and gave me my first weekend job, which was helping him sell books on this sort of thing at his lectures, and generally helping set up the events and things like that. So right from the age of 14, 15, I was already immersed in that world, really.
Right. How did you know where to look? Many adults don't even know where to look.
I just went to the local bookshop. I say local, it was sort of the center of London. So there was only one book on the topic, and that was sort of where I started. And then I somehow found out about, there was a bookshop called Watkins. It's still there to this day. It's about 100 and something year old esoteric shop in central London. And I discovered that, and I started going there. I was literally spending the money that I earned from the weekend job. I was literally going and buying books on these kind of topics. So pretty much every weekend I was there, or at one of the secondhand bookshops near to where I lived, and I would be buying, books on this kind of topic. Like I said, I just became quite obsessed with it. I think I have been my whole life, really. I've just been really passionate about the topic and wanting to learn everything I can, and started off with being deeply immersed in the more esoteric side of things. And then later on, I moved towards learning more about parapsychology and getting involved with the science. And so I went through the whole process, because, it's getting on for 40 years now.
Tell our people what that process is like in learning what an out-of-body experience is all about.
Well, I guess initially I went through the process like most people. I learned what I now refer to as more the theosophical model, sort of from theosophy, the idea of multiple energy bodies, the etheric body, the astral body, etc., etc. Depending on which sort of flavor you look at, there's all different amounts of bodies that they talk about. And I believed everything pretty much, the silver cord, all the typical stuff that you hear about. And I went very deeply into it. I got involved with a Golden Dawn group, and different esoteric groups in London. Got involved with training and doing all the work with those kind of groups, and then moved on from that, and then started to, I guess, engage more with the skepticism that people have naturally, and realized that there was some relevance to that, and that maybe some of the things that I'd learned from the esoteric perspectives didn't actually add up. They didn't really match with what I was actually experiencing, and then realizing that it didn't really match with a lot of what other people were experiencing as well. So that became a real process and a really interesting journey as well, kind of learning it from both perspectives, from the skeptical and the esoteric, and then kind of maybe finding some kind of middle ground. I would say that's maybe somewhere like where I am now. I've sort of found this place where I think I've kept some of what the esoteric traditions were suggesting, and I've kept some of the science. So now I guess I look at it from a scientific perspective, in the sense that the scientific method sort of guides my approach to OBEs. I try to examine them in a way that tests my own assumptions and my own beliefs. I try to challenge what I believe, even in myself. So I take that perspective, but then I'm open-minded in terms of what the possibilities could be, what could be true. So I sort of approach it in that kind of way. And I think that's been really healthy in terms of discovering new ways to approach it, new ways to induce the experience, new possibilities of what might be actually going on with out-of-body experiences, rather than just going with the kind of old-fashioned models of what might be going on. So yeah, it's been a journey right the way through, really.
You've also made a major commitment in time, in money, in research. How has that worked out for you as you've, gained experience, gained a following, gained understanding of how to control an out of body experience? How has your life changed on your path?
Oh, I think my life's changed hugely in terms of, because like I mentioned, coming from an environment that was not the most desirable environment to grow up in, let's put it that way. And I think it gave me a different perspective. It made me look at the situations around me, the kind of how it was growing up in London, all of that kind of thing. It probably I wouldn't have done anything that was so much about learning and growing in that kind of sense if I hadn't had these kinds of experiences. So I think it kind of took me in that direction as well. It just opened my mind up to so many different areas, reading about philosophy, reading about science, reading about spiritual traditions all around the world, learning about different forms of political ideas, a whole spectrum of viewpoints and ideas, really, that I probably wouldn't have been introduced to or wouldn't have engaged with in any sense if these experiences hadn't happened. So I think ultimately it's changed pretty much everything about how, and I've lived a very unconventional life, I guess, living in different countries like Estonia, a very small country in the Baltics, where I lived for 10 years, now living in Ireland, grew up in London, but traveled all over the world, been through lots of different things that have changed my perspective in terms of direct experiences with the OBEs as well, challenged my understanding of time and space, all of these kinds of things. So yeah, I think it's changed everything really fundamentally.
Is there anything you didn't like about that change?
I wouldn't say there is, no. I mean, obviously there's always, I think every decision you make in life, you close some doors, for example, when you walk a particular path, you maybe sacrifice something else in your life. Maybe I don't have any kids or anything, for example, so I've kind of walked in a direction that meant I've had incredible experiences and been all over the world and all this kind of thing, but maybe not done the more traditional family life side of things. So, I mean, there's still a possibility it could happen, but there's the kind of different journeys that we take in life, I guess.
Do you ever wish that it would have went differently? I know a lot of experiencers do feel that way, as we have about 45 seconds.
No, I think I've had an incredible experience in life so far, so no, I don't regret anything.
That's a good way to put it, though. So many people do live with regret. So the fact that you have been able to say, this is my journey, this is my path that I'm supposed to be on, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, I think I couldn't in any way like regret the life I've lived. I think it's been an incredible life, really.
All right. I'm going to get you to hold right there, Graham, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. We have Graham Nicholls, author, researcher, experiencer of out-of-body experiences. He coaches people to do it. He takes videos of doing out-of-body. He's an educator. He is somebody who speaks at a lot of events. You can find his books on his website, GrahamNichols.com. Make sure you check it on out. This is Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back for the second half hour right after this. All right, we are clear. We got about 5 minutes. Just take your mute off there. There we go. It was a quick half hour.
It was.
What's for breakfast this morning?
Oh, I haven't thought that far ahead yet.
I can go outside and get you some snowballs if you want.
I'll see what my partner wants when she wakes up.
I'm thinking you're going to be in the kitchen making some eggs and hash browns with some ham.
No, I'm vegan, so it won't be that.
Oh God, definitely not.
That's another thing that I guess has changed in my life. My dad, his other job was a butcher, so
Oh
yeah,
no, there's a contradiction,
quite a journey on that level as well.
right?
Yeah, he even worked in slaughterhouses and stuff. He was he worked at Smithfield Market, which is one of the oldest and biggest markets in London.
Oh wow. Blue Cruz, how you doing? Vanessa wants to know, what about avocado toast? Are you going with avocado toast?
Maybe.
I like avocado. To me, it tastes like nothing, but it's still a good nothing. In about 3 minutes. Joe, that sounds excellent. Avocado, red onion, bean sprouts, and brunchwagon on toast. That sounds good. I just had spaghetti for dinner tonight, and I overloaded on the hot sauce. And now it's like burning all over. But it's a good burn. This is how you do not get colds.
I do like spicy foods. It's quite makes sense to me.
My doctor is from Sudan. And I remember during the lockdowns, he said to me, he goes, "What are you doing to stay safe?" I said, "Well, I'm doing the social distancing stuff. I'm a germaphobe, so I'm always washing my hands. And vitamin B, vitamin C." And I said, "I'm eating a lot of hot sauce with capsicum in it." And he looks at me, he goes, "Ah, yes, capsicum." And then he points right at me and says, "You'll never get it."
Okay.
And I went, okay, never got it. Because I don't have a mucus lining in my lungs.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Mm-hmm. That's my secret to the world that I don't profess on anybody unless you like really spicy food.
Yeah, we've even got chilies growing here. So.
Oh, nice. Benno, how are you? Nice to see you. And Bad Cop, No Donuts. How you doing, buddy? Question, Fluffy Pancakes. Your question will be asked in hour number 2. when we take questions. And we got about 35 seconds. Thank you to T-Bone, my man, for gifting out a Spaced Out Radio membership here on the YouTube channel. The super chat is open. It is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show nightly. And of course, you're looking for late gifts for Christmas. Yeah, because it's late in the season now. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. So that way you and the people you love can look good daily by wearing our stuff. Here we go, everybody. We're into the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We greatly appreciate you tuning us on in as we're talking out-of-body experiences with our guest, Graham Nicholls. Coming up first, we want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, please check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Yes, we do. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Graham Nicholls is here. He literally teaches people about out-of-body experiences, and that's what we're going to get into. He's an author where you can find his books on his website, grahamnichols.com. Graham, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it.
It's great to be on.
For people listening for the first time, because there always are new people, they may not know what an out-of-body experience is. Maybe you could give us a definition.
Sure. I think there's two levels to the definition. So I the way I tend to look at it is there is the experiential side of it, what it feels like to us to have an out-of-body experience. And then there's the more complicated side, which is what might actually be going on, the reality, the sort of science of it, if you like. So when it comes to what it feels like, generally, it's the feeling of usually a multisensory experience of leaving the body, feeling like you've drifted up above the body or found yourself at another location, like I mentioned with my first experiences. There's usually a feeling of traveling, movement in some way, so going somewhere. Some people just have an experience where they're outside their body looking back at themselves, but many people will travel to a different part of their home or will completely go out of the house altogether, etc. They'll usually be floating or drifting in the air. So there's a element of flight or defying gravity, if you like, to the experience as well. So that's kind of how it feels. There's often the most common actually is a sense of a traveling consciousness rather than an energy body. The general kind of popular culture reference is that there's always these kind of bodies, but in reality the majority of people experience it more as a traveling consciousness, and that's based on research asking thousands of people what they actually experienced. So there's that aspect of it. Then in terms of the science, I tend to think, I lean towards, in terms of all the research I've done, both in a scientific context, the esoteric research I did in the past, my own personal experiences, the hundreds of people I've worked with over the years, when I put all that together, the strongest argument, I think, is that it's some kind of extended consciousness, that we're experiencing a kind of multi-sensory, interconnected consciousness. So it's almost like if you imagine a kind of virtual reality, wearing a headset and experiencing all of the senses as you're moving around in that virtual environment. I think it's something akin to that, but without any technology involved. It's essentially like all of your sensory information, everything that you usually experience in the brain, is disconnected and experienced somewhere else. So that's kind of, so I see it almost like a construct, much like our experience of the world in general, because sight, for example, is not just images coming into our eyes and then we see it purely as it is. It's an interpretation by our brain. Sometimes people misunderstand me in this point. I'm not saying it's fully and only to do with the brain. I'm just saying that obviously while we're alive and we're functioning, our brain is part of the story, it's part of the process. But I think that it's extended beyond that and quite feasibly exists independently of the brain as well. So yeah, that's the sort of model that I tend to lean towards at the moment. I mean, there are different theories about psi abilities or psychic abilities. For example, Brian Josephson, who put forward an idea of quantum entanglement being potentially the mechanism by which it works. So Roger Penrose has put forward the idea of OR, the idea that potentially low-level structures of cells, microtubules, might potentially be entangled, and that could lead to things like near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. So those are models within science that could potentially lead to some kind of explanation of what's going on. So that's kind of my definition of how I see it.
Do you believe out-of-body experiences are part of a natural human experience or ability, or do you
I
believe
do,
it's a
yeah.
rare phenomena?
Well, whether it's rare, I mean, it seems to be around 10% of the population will have at least one experience spontaneously in their lifetime. So that's fairly rare, but not super rare. Having consistent experiences through your life, for sure, that is pretty rare. But I think that it's more about whether it's natural, supernatural. That's really the question that I think a lot of people get to, and I tend to see it that our current definition of what is natural will be expanded in the future. I do think that it is a natural part of reality, like all psychic abilities are a natural part of nature, and I think that we will get to that point that we'll see it like that one day. Of course, people have different viewpoints. Some people see it as a purely supernatural thing. That's everyone has to take it from their own frame, if you like, their own filter on how they see the world. But from my perspective, I think it's probably a natural phenomena.
For most people, when they have their first one, do they even know it's happening, or is it something that happens naturally?
I think most of the time it happens naturally, like it did with me. People's early experiences tend to be spontaneous. Some people do learn intentionally to do it, and they've never had an experience before. Many of the people I work with when I'm teaching one-to-one and in different contexts, that has led to people who've never had an experience before having their first experience. So there are obviously people who do it from a purely intentional perspective, that they want to learn to do it. But I think the majority of people have at least maybe one experience, one or two, like I did, and then that sparks their interest and makes them want to learn more about it and learn to do it themselves.
I have heard that a lot of people experience out-of-body experiences at night when they're sleeping. Is this the case when it mostly happens?
That's actually a tricky question, because I try to go by the research. So if you look at generally the trends, like the trends on the internet at the moment, for example, would suggest that it's all sleep based and that kind of thing. But if you go back to when I started in the late 80s, early 90s, it was very much more focused on consciously inducing out-of-body experiences, which is how I do it. I almost never have OBEs from sleep or in a sleep state. They're nearly always from a a kind of trance state. I'm very natural and fluid at going into altered states and trance states. So it's very natural for me to go into the OBE in that kind of context. But I think at the moment, there's a bit of a trend towards nighttime approaches, sleep paralysis, things like that. I tend to steer clear of sleep paralysis, especially because people often have scary or unpleasant experiences via sleep paralysis. So it's not my recommended way to go. But many people are sort of focused on that at the moment. But it comes in waves. There are different trends over time. You know, in the nearly 40 years I've been doing this, I've seen lots of different peaks and troughs, if you like, of how people have focused on inducing the experiences, etc.
Why would we want to do this?
I mean, to me, it's why wouldn't we? It's kind of like, to me, it enhances our experience of the world directly. It allows us to answer those questions about a soul or a spirit or, you know, life after death. A lot of these big questions: do we continue? What is the nature of consciousness? All of these things that are probably the most fundamental questions human beings can ask. And I think an out-of-body experience allows us to explore that in the most direct way I can think of. I can't think of any other way you could do it in such a direct, personalized way, that you're literally having an experience of, if there is some kind of spirit, you're literally directly experiencing it. So to me, I find it fascinating that people wouldn't see that, you know. So yeah, to me, it's and also it's just an incredible experience. It's like, I guess it's a bit like, why would you travel the world? Well, because there's so many incredible cultures and places to see, and, you know, all of that kind of thing. So, and there's the potential to explore that even within the OBE. But I think it's, for me, the core of life, the core of existence really is to experience in the most full way we can. We have consciousness, and I think, why not explore the full potential of what that consciousness means and what it is to be alive?
How do OBEs differ from lucid dreaming or, say, vivid imaginations?
Well, there's been various research looking at OBEs in terms of what's going on in the brain, and we know that people having out-of-body experiences do not have the same brain waves that you would expect in a dream, for example. They're also not showing the signs of being asleep. There was actually some really good research done in Canada with a woman in an fMRI scanner. They put her in an fMRI scanner and she induced out-of-body experiences, and they monitored what was going on in her brain. So it was clear that she wasn't asleep and that she wasn't dreaming in any kind of context. I've also used neurofeedback and EEG, and again, it was clear that I wasn't dreaming in my personal experiences. There are obviously people who heavily focus on lucid dreams as a way of inducing the experience. That is a valid way of getting to the out-of-body experience, but it is trickier when you do it that way, because obviously then it is harder to differentiate between whether you're having a genuine out-of-body experience or whether it is some kind of lucid dream, because obviously you can dream about anything. So potentially it could be very difficult to say the two are different. But there are various aspects to an OBE that do differ quite a lot from a lucid dream. So there was the brain state side of things I just mentioned, but then there's also, for example, if you look at your hands in a lucid dream, this is actually one of the reality checks, one of the ways of understanding if you're having a lucid dream. If you look at your hands will distort or change or transform in some way. This is one of the ways that you know that you're having a lucid dream. Whereas if you do have some kind of secondary body and you look at your hands in an out-of-body experience, they will remain consistent. Out-of-body experiences also have a lot more consistency in general in terms of the phenomena, the feeling of drifting or floating, flying, that kind of thing is nearly always consistent in an out-of-body experience, whereas in a lucid dream, anything is potentially possible, and you won't necessarily be floating or flying and that kind of thing. So, and in my experience, they also just feel quite different. They're not that similar in terms of how it is to be in that environment. If people are interested, there's an article on my website where I go into many key differences between lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences.
Lucid dreams are a little bit more dream oriented, where there's a lot of fake things happening, like imaginative things happening, correct? Whereas out of body experiences, you're pretty much seeing things in real time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Now I got it. Are they spontaneous? Like, can you have a spontaneous OBE?
Yes, they can be spontaneous or induced. Most of my out-of-body experiences are induced, but I do have occasional spontaneous ones. 2 nights ago, I had, I guess you would call it a semi-spontaneous out-of-body experience. So I felt in the right kind of state. As I was mentioning, it's a lot to do with trance states in my case. So I already felt kind of tuned in, heightened, if you like. I was already starting to feel like it might be the right time to induce the experience. And then I laid down in this room. This blackout room is kind of a sensory deprivation space that I use for my out-of-body experiences. So I have a kind of massage bed, just a basic flat platform, and I lay on that. And so I went through the process, and I had an out-of-body experience where I was over a natural environment, and I saw this kind of statue in the out-of-body experience. So that will be something that I'm going to research and try and find if that statue actually exists somewhere, potentially in Ireland, for example. Had a feeling maybe I was still somewhere in Ireland, but I'm not sure where I actually was. So yeah, it was a very vivid and intensely real experience, and so it had elements of being spontaneous and elements of being induced on that particular occasion. So there's a spectrum of how the experience can unfold. Essentially, it could be spontaneous or induced.
What about control, though? Are you fully in control when you do this, or are the elements around you in control?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I would say it's something, for most people, it's akin to maybe sailing on the ocean, for example. You utilize the elements the same way, like with a sail, you might move the sail to catch the wind and use the elements to kind of guide you in a particular direction. So I think within an out-of-body experience, there's something akin to tides, what some people call astral tides or something like that, where you feel like you're drifting or being sent in a particular direction. I often do experience that kind of thing, but again, you can somewhat steer where you go. But you might, for example, just find yourself in a distant location. Like I just mentioned, I found myself moving over these natural sort of green nature sort of landscapes, just sort of moving over those environments. I didn't intend to go to that location, but once I was there, I could steer or make decisions about where I would go within that environment. So there's a mixture going on, essentially.
I have always heard a theory that you have to beware when you're in an out of body experience. And the reason why you have to be is because when you leave your body, it is possible for other spirits to enter. Is that even possible?
Personally, in my experience, my research, etc., I don't think so. Obviously, people can have different opinions and viewpoints on that, and everyone's viewpoint is sort of valid. But in terms of the many years of research and experiences I've had, I don't think that is the case. Like I mentioned, I think that it's more to do with an extended consciousness rather than a spirit coming out of a body in a very like a kind of Russian doll kind of scenario. I do tend to see it more as our consciousness is expanded rather than there's a physical body and an energy body that are kind of exact replicas of something and one pops out of the other. Haven't really experienced or seen very good evidence to support that idea over the years. There is the thing that you might experience being in some kind of body, but there are things within that that suggest that that body is probably some kind of mental construct or projection. For example, usually people will describe wearing clothes, for example. If it's some kind of energy body that's innate to the physical body, why are you wearing clothes? That's one that suggests that your mind or your sense of how you appear and look and all of that kind of thing influences the structure of the experience to some degree. So there are things that suggest that even when there is an energy body or a secondary body, it may well be something more to do with your own mind than to do with the true nature of the experience.
We have 3.5 minutes before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Graham Nicholls is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking out-of-body experiences. And Graham, in regards to the fact that you can't have other spirits take over your body, that's a relief for me because I had heard that this was something where there were pretty nasty spirits out there who were looking on that plane to try and take over.
Yeah, I think that is a common belief and a common fear, and but I think the good news is I think that's more of an old school idea, and I think we're starting to move beyond that kind of thing. We've got a lot more understanding now of what might be going on with the experience, and yeah, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, the sleep paralysis side of things, I think that's where these kind of ideas stem from. Because if you have a sleep paralysis experience, it's very common to experience the crone or the old man or some kind of, figures and dark figures and things like that. But I think that's a phenomena of sleep paralysis, not a phenomena of OBEs. So I think if you're doing it in that way, you're far more likely to have a scary experience or experience something negative in that kind of context. So that's why I don't use that method. I've never experienced sleep paralysis, and I don't teach sleep paralysis as a methodology, and I advise people away from that. So in my teaching approach, people don't, I can't remember a single scenario of someone saying that they, through my methodologies, that they experience some kind of being or something in the room, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think the fact that people are moving towards sleep paralysis, they're basically having like a waking nightmare, and then that's leading them to believe that there's something bad out there, kind of potentially. But like I say, I think it's more of a waking nightmare.
See if we can get one more question in here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. When you had your first OBE, did you notice any continuing triggers with your OBEs since then?
Can you explain what you mean by triggers a bit more?
Is there something that is going to set it off, or are you so controlled now that you just kind of, don't get those natural triggers to set it off?
I do think that it's important to create a kind of context for the experience to happen. So yeah, I do notice that, as I mentioned a little bit before, that idea of being open or the feeling of being sort of tuned in. If I have that feeling, then I think I know that it's a good time to try and induce the experience. So I've learned the signs, if you like.
What are a couple of those signs?
The feeling of being open, any kind of a vibration, electrical sensations, that kind of thing. Feeling of going into some kind of altered state, something akin to like hypnosis or deep meditation, those kinds of things. But mainly it's this sort of feeling almost like a flow state, this kind of open, tuned in, sort of hyper focus kind of state.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Out of body experiences, we're learning from a real student of this game. GrahamNichols.com is Graham's website. Check it on out. His books are there as well. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. Sounding great there, Graham Nichols.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to put you in the green room for a couple minutes, okay?
Okay, I'll take a break too then.
All right. Be right back, everybody. right. Let's bring Graham back in here. How you doing, buddy?
Good, thank you.
I'm doing good. This is fun. Learning a lot tonight.
That's good. Yeah, I have a bit of a different take to the general people on this topic.
All right, quickly here. We got 90 seconds. On X, East Coast turnaround. How you doing? And Boise, how are you? We're going to get some audience questions. We're going to mix them in here as we go through this hour. All right. Let's make sure I haven't missed anybody. Walter Kochabinski, nice to see you. Smokes a lot. Nice to have you back. Richard Minnick, how you doing, my friend? All right. Sorry, guys. My body is finally starting to stiffen up after slipping on black ice yesterday. Warden Dragon, how you doing? So I'm pretty uncomfortable, to be blunt. Pretty uncomfortable. That's okay. We'll get through it. Super Chat is open. Wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you to T-Bone for gifting a membership. Thank you for all of you who have shopped at spacedoutradio.com. The gorgeous and talented Kira, nice to see you, my dear. Here we go, everybody. Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Thank you for tuning us in tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are talking about out-of-body experiences. Is this something we should do? I don't really know. I don't know. It kind of freaks me out, to be blunt. That's okay. Our guest, Graham Nicholls, will join us momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you, or let us say hello first, to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Pursuit. Pursuit is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's bring in our guest. Graham Nicholls is an out-of-body experiencer. He now teaches people how to do it. He's written books about it. You can find his books on his website, which is called grahamnichols.com. His books, Navigating the Out-of-Body Experiences and Avenues of the Human Spirit. Graham, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate you.
It's good to be on. I'm really enjoying it.
All right. I want to start off with an audience question here. Let's start off fluffy here. Can you please share with us how you pushed through the itchiness before you had your out-of-body?
I can't say I've experienced itchiness particularly, but if I feel an itch or something like that, then I usually just scratch it or whatever. That this might be relating potentially to the idea that you mustn't ever move when you're trying to induce an OBE. And so if you get an itch or you feel uncomfortable in some way, then you're supposed to kind of push through it. I don't believe that's the case, that you need to remain completely still. I have moved within the vibrational state, which is the common precursor to an out-of-body experience. There are other transitional stages. But if I'm in that kind of state and I feel uncomfortable or I need to scratch or whatever, then I just will, and I'll get back to the position as quickly as I can. And that usually doesn't disrupt anything. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
I'd never heard of people getting itchy while doing an out of body experience.
No.
It's normal.
Um, I think people can get itchy when, they're warm and, they're laying down and, it's just a natural phenomena, I guess. So, yeah, I think it's more related to that than specifically out of body experiences.
All right, let's go to one more audience question. And let's next go to Erica. Some who remote view can astral project too. Do you also remote view?
I do actually, yes. I've been involved in remote viewing for quite a few years. I've spoken at the International Remote Viewing Association conference. I've met a lot of the people who were involved in the remote viewing program, Russell Targ, Paul Smith, for example. So, yeah, it's something that I find very interesting. I think they're distinct phenomenon. I think that remote viewing is a protocol for applied predominantly clairvoyance. It's more of a structured protocol. That's essentially what it is. So I think that can be very helpful in structuring your approach to psychic abilities so that you don't get taken down the sort of illusory angle where your brain gets in the way, what they call analytical overlay in the remote viewing area. That kind of stuff can get in the way of your psychic perceptions. So the remote viewing approach helps you to get beyond that and to be able to utilize your psychic abilities more consistently. So I think that's really good. And I think it's definitely one end of a continuum, whereas out of body experiences are sort of when you're fully immersed and separate from your ordinary physical senses. Whereas remote viewing, you're still kind of aware of what you're doing. You're still present in the room. You're still conscious of what you're doing in a very, very consistent way. So it's more practical in many senses for some applications, especially scientific research. One of the scientific projects that I've been involved with the Rhine Research Center was a 14-week study where we were looking at remote viewing, remote perceptions. I had to try and look at images that were set up in the US while I was living in Estonia at the time. And I would try to see the targets. So it was interesting. I used remote viewing and I used out-of-body experiences, but the out-of-body experience occasions were my best hits, and I had very some 100% hits in that, using the out-of-body experience as a methodology. So that was under scientific controlled conditions. So that's pretty interesting, I think, in terms of that area.
Have you ever run into other people while you've been remote viewing?
Remote viewing, no, but out of body experiences, yes.
What's that like when you run into other people?
It's kind of fascinating because I guess you're curious whether the actual person is sort of conscious or not, or whether they're actually like a spirit or something like that. I've done various experiments over the years where I've tried to meet with a person to varying degrees of success. It's not an easy thing to do, but on occasion it has been successful. I have been seen while out of body as a shadow figure. That seems to be the common way that people will see you. If you're out of body, they might see a sort of like a shadowy form. That happened actually when I returned to the UK at one Christmas, and I had an OBE back to Estonia when I was living there, and people who I was living with at the time were able to perceive me as a sort of shadow figure. So that's one scenario. I also had one of my students manage to have an out-of-body experience with his son, which was really interesting, really unique experience. His young son was only, I think, 10 or 11, something like that. And he had his first out-of-body experience, and his father was able to meet with him while he was out of body. So there's some pretty amazing experiences out there in terms of meeting with people.
Right. Have you ever remote viewed or out of body traveled seen somebody and then seen them in real life?
No, not if I. Do you mean someone I didn't know? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think.
let's say you're out of body and you see someone, and then like I don't know, a week later you're out at a restaurant or at a pub and you see that person. Have you ever had that happen?
I can't say I've had that happen. No, I mean I have seen people who I've then tried to locate. I had one experience where a woman saw me in the out of body experience, which obviously doesn't usually happen. But I went into this building near Marble Arch in central London, and she looked at me, looked startled, quite well, not she wasn't scared. I think but she thought it was some kind of religious experience. I think she was a Middle Eastern woman, and she put her hands up in a kind of Muslim prayer, and looked at me and seemed to. I don't know what she was seeing, but she seemed to feel it was some kind of deep spiritual experience. So yeah, that's an example of someone seeing me. And then I was very curious if I could locate her, but I was never able to. I tried to kind of work out what the address would have been, but I wasn't sure enough exactly what apartment it was to be totally sure. But I did try a few times, I remember, to locate her, but I wasn't able to.
Have you ever used remote viewing or out of body travel to try and find missing people?
I haven't actually been approached to do something like that. I would definitely be interested in that kind of thing, but most of the remote viewing and things like that I've done has been more in the context of science research, that kind of stuff. I haven't really been asked to do things in the context of missing people, and I haven't personally known anyone who was missing. So yeah, that hasn't really come up. But it would be interesting to explore. I definitely think it can be done, especially a mix of using maybe dowsing and remote viewing can be a good way to work in that sense. But yeah, that's not been something I've explored, no.
Another audience question from us here, and that would be from T-Bone. What answers do you think you have gotten from doing all of this about spirituality, life, consciousness?
I think the main sort of, I guess, spiritual lesson would be this sense of interconnectedness, or you could extend that even to oneness, this sense of everything in life being interconnected in a very fundamental way, and that maybe leads to maybe a more positive or compassionate outlook on life. So that's been something that's definitely had a big impact. In terms of answers, that's actually a kind of fascinating one, because in some senses it's made me less concerned with answers and more concerned with experience and direct experience and living. That has become, if you like, the answer in my perspective. It's more this sense of, as I mentioned, I started off very much in this sort of esoteric framework, and then I moved more into the science. But I think all through that I've had this spiritual sense, and I think that within that it's been stripping away a lot of the beliefs and assumptions that maybe I had at different points in my life, and trying to get to sort of an essence. So it sort of got me to this point of this kind of core consciousness. So in some senses it's been a sort of stripping away of answers or beliefs or questions, and just getting to this point where reality itself seems to be the core of things, just very like kind of simplifying things. I guess it's like with a lot of things, when you're early on you can take on so many ideas and be so kind of immersed in things, and then as you get more and more advanced with something, you actually realize that there's so much you don't know, and this, but then at the same time, the sort of essence and the truth of things seems to be in simplifying, in going to a kind of more fundamental idea of things. So I guess that's, but in terms of what those maybe answers might be, in a sense, like I said, the interconnectedness, maybe the golden rule, the idea of sort of treat others or as you would yourself, that kind of fundamental sense of empathy. So seeing my own consciousness as so expanded and interconnected, I can then see that in others. So you get this kind of enhanced or expanded sense of empathy that arises from that.
Right.
So that's the sort of the spiritual lesson, I guess.
Let's move on to another question here. Let's go to Benno. Is it emotional still being beaten all the time by Australia in cricket? I don't know what that has to do with anything. Don't worry.
I've never watched cricket, I'm afraid. I know that's a stereotype of the English, but no, I've never been to cricket or watched it.
Let's go to Erica. So when you leave your body, if it's your soul, is your body considered dead at that moment?
Well, I don't know if it is your soul. What do you mean by soul? You know, we get into kind of tricky territory. Well, your body is definitely not dead in an out-of-body experience. Like I said, I see it more as an extended consciousness. I think that consciousness is possibly fundamental to the nature of reality in some sense. Maybe at the very least, it has to be within the laws of nature and physics. Otherwise, we wouldn't have consciousness. So I think it's got to be somewhat fundamental to the nature of reality. So I see it more as consciousness, and possibly when we die, we connect with this bigger consciousness. So it's something akin to a computer connected to the internet. Maybe you could look at it like, so you've got the individual computer with all the workings of it, that would be your brain, and then the internet would be something like this expanded consciousness I'm talking about. So that would be like the out-of-body experience. So I think possibly when we die, the computer, the mechanisms and everything of that particular device might cease to exist, but then what was connected and what was active online, you know, in the expanded consciousness continues in some way. So that would be my idea, roughly, in a very simplistic sense, of what I consider the idea of the soul or a continuation, etc. So no, we're not considered dead because we're not dead. We're just experiencing something in a different way. It's like we've switched frequencies to use a radio metaphor or something. We've switched to a different station for a period of time. That's what I was alluding to when I talked about that kind of virtual reality, that I think an out-of-body experience is almost like a virtual reality to some degree.
All right, moving on here. Let us go next to Jules. If people perceived you as a shadow, are all shadows out of body experiencing people?
It's a good question. It's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, possibly it's how people perceive any kind of spiritual being or spiritual person, or it could just be people having out-of-body experiences. It's very hard to know. I doubt it. I think that it is probably bigger than that. I think that probably people do also perceive spirits or whatever they are, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, I've seen shadow forms myself, which I don't think were people having out-of-body experiences. I think it was some kind of ghost experience, that kind of thing. I've seen apparitions also that looked completely normal, like the person was physically standing there and then they've disappeared instantly. So I've had a kind of range of different experience, and I've also seen a large orb as well that was kind of green energy and opaque, around the size of a basketball. I saw that with a friend of mine, so we both saw it, and it was there for maybe 10 minutes. So I've had a range of experiences of things that would maybe come into the category of a spirit, but they weren't all shadow forms. So yeah, I think there's different forms that things can take. I think it's to do with our own perceptions, a lot of it as well. I believe. I think it's probably how we interpret what we're seeing, how our brains do, how we understand what we're seeing. So I think that has a big factor in it, really.
Do you think then what people claim is shadow people or shadow beings, many people believe they're demonic. Many people believe that they are of a darker realm. Do you think there is a difference between shadows from an out of the body experience and those shadow people perceive as evil?
Well, they would have to be, really, because the beings that I've perceived, or like for example, the father and son that I mentioned who met while out of body, they both perceived each other as shadow forms. I don't think the father or the 11-year-old boy were evil in any way. So I think that those shadow forms have to also be non-evil forms. I've never experienced anything evil or any kind of evil being, but people do believe these kind of things. But I think that, again, it's a lot to do with people's own belief systems, and that's fine. It's a bit like, you can have one person in a room who believes that they experience God every single day, and a person sitting next to that person who says they don't experience anything like that, and they're a complete atheist. Those people are both living in this world, experiencing essentially the same things, but have a completely different perspective. So I think it's true with the spiritual level of things as well, that we can have completely different perspectives on the same thing, that one person believes in evil, another person doesn't. Who's right? Very hard to say.
Great answer on that one. Great answer. We have 2.5 minutes to go before we have to go to break. At the bottom of the hour, Graham Nicholls is our guest tonight, talking out-of-body experiences. Let's go to Fluffy here. Do you say a protection affirmation or prayer before going out of body?
I don't, because I don't really have any fears of the experience. I worked out more than 1,000 OBEs at this point. It's been an average of about 3 OBEs a month since I was 14. So, and I've never encountered anything remotely evil looking or anything negative in that sense. The people I work with haven't either. Like I said, the only real descriptions of anything harmful I've ever encountered has been through sleep paralysis. So I just think that people have waking nightmares, and that's where this idea that it can be harmful in some way. I actually think the opposite. I actually think OBEs can be very life-affirming, healing, very beneficial to us in terms of our well-being. So I don't think there's anything inherently dangerous about the experience. Some people completely disagree with that, and that's valid. But in the nearly 40 years I've been doing this, I have not seen anything in the research or in my experiences or the experiences of the hundreds of people I've worked with, and looking at the literature in depth, I haven't seen anything that's convinced me that the experience is harmful or dangerous in any way.
We sneak in one more here. Let's try. Tebow wants to know, are there any interlopers during your out-of-body experiences?
Interlopers? Not sure what he means by that. If he means like sometimes just beings appearing or something like that, then yes, I've encountered, as I've mentioned, I've encountered different physical people, different entities, but nothing harmful or anything like that. Haven't experienced anything alien. People sometimes ask me about that. Haven't experienced anything along those lines, although I've had experiences that might be along those lines in physical life. I've seen 8 lights that were all moving and doing interconnected movements over Avebury, the stone circle in England, and also very close to there in a place called West Kennet Longborough, I had an intense feeling of an energy. And I put my hand out. I could literally feel the energy, and I lifted my hand up. And as I lifted my hand up in the sky, kind of a beam of energy that had a beginning and an end that was horizontal, about 100 meters above us, or maybe more, appeared in the sky. I was with a friend of mine, so he witnessed it as well. So that was an incredible thing because I felt it before it appeared.
Let's go to break. Graham Nicholls on Spaced Out Radio continues after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
That one was my fault. I was listening too intently. All right. We got a bunch more questions for our audience to continue. And let's see here. Got about 4.5 minutes. It's a good time. It's a good time. You're so knowledgeable on this subject, my man.
Thanks. Yeah, I have gone probably as deep as it's possible to go, really.
Yeah, you could get pretty deep with it, eh?
Yeah, you can. There's so much in terms of the esoteric side as well as the science side. So I think it's good that I have that balance, that I've kind of studied both.
What do you prefer, out of body or astral?
Well, I kind of just see astral as an alternative term for an induced out of body experience, really. But if you mean going to other levels, I find that really fascinating, seeing kind of potentially afterlife environments and things like that. I mean, that is really fascinating. But I think I do really love when I'm able to verify an experience, because that, that's really suggests that there's a truth to these experiences and all of that.
I personally astral traveled. I have not had an out-of-body experience that I know of yet. Astral traveling is kind of fun, especially when you see people kind of snooping in on you, like in remote viewing or something like that. That's kind of fun.
Maybe
Broski,
that's
how you
what.
doing?
Maybe
Yeah.
that's what the interloper comment was about.
Good old interlopers. I don't think we've ever used the word interlopers on this show before. So
No, I wasn't. I
do it.
wasn't totally sure what was meant by that, but
Mm-hmm. What is it, a whopping 6:30 there now?
I don't know. I'm not looking at the time. I guess it is. Yes.
About 2 minutes. Hi, Thurston Howell the third. How's Lovey doing? Let us know. 90 seconds. Thank you to T-Bone. T-Bone, I'm going to make you a song one day. Thank you to T-Bone for our lone membership of the night. Thank you to everyone who has hit subscribe, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up. We need your help with the thumbs up, and comment after the show on YouTube, especially to let us know how you feel about it, what you thought. Kind of helps with the algorithms. Still looking for our first super chat of the night. I know. For all of us, payday is just a couple days away. So hold on to your stuff. And you got Christmas coming up. Because you better prepare for Vegas next year, where we're all going to be, and then CaribouCon in September. You better be there. We got 20 seconds. Here we go. We're into the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in as we continue to talk out-of-body experiences until the top of the hour here with our guest, Graham Nicholls. First, we want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Graham Nicholls is here for the final time tonight. We have until the top of the hour. So we are talking out-of-body experiences, and you can go to his website where you can find his books. What are they called? Navigating the Out-of-Body Experience and Avenues of the Human Spirit. Graham's website, once again, grahamnichols.com. Graham, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be on.
All right, let's continue with some audience questions. Go to Hillbilly Herb. Are there any common landmarks in the astral realms that folks could use to meet up, like a special tree or place?
That's an interesting question, because actually not so much on astral planes or anything like that, but when I was a teenager, we used to use St. Paul's Cathedral in London, the dome of the cathedral. There's a lot more tall buildings now in London, but at that point, it was quite a good landmark. So we would use that to focus on, and it kind of stemmed from one of the people that I knew when I was at school. His father used to have out-of-body experiences, and they used to use St. Paul's Cathedral as a meet-up point as well. So we often would try to sort of meet up there. Like I mentioned earlier, varying degrees of success, but we did have some very interesting, successful meetups with that kind of thing. But it's not the easiest thing to do, to meet people out of body. I think if you can do it on the sort of astral levels or non-physical, I call them the transphysical levels. If you do experience things on those kind of levels and you're able to meet and have a similar experience, I think that can be almost like an interesting verification of those kind of levels. So I think that's pretty interesting. So yeah, I don't have a specific place on a non-physical level that I focus on to meet with people, but in the physical sense, I've used St. Paul's in London.
All right, let's move on to another question. Time for a question from Eugene. Can you please describe the remote viewing protocols?
Well, there are various different ones, but essentially it's just a structure that's used for psychic ability. You can look various different ones up online. Usually they begin with an ideogram, which is kind of like a squiggle that you would do just very quickly, to which is supposed to give like an unconscious connection with the target site or the target the target location that you're trying to do a remote viewing of, and it would give you clues like, is it a mountainous area, is it a smooth area, is it a watery area, that kind of thing. You would kind of probe it with your pen, you would kind of put your pen on it, and then an initial impression, the first thing that comes into your mind, you would describe it. And then in various protocols, you would take things deeper. You would like make notes of the nature of the structure of the environment, and you would kind of build on that. And then the final stage, you would do a kind of sketch of it. So you're basically using a structure, step-by-step structure, to avoid your imagination or your mind getting in the way of the psychic signal, as Russell Targ says. You also tend to have a section to the side of your sheet of paper that you're working on where you would write AOL, analytical overlay. So anything that sort of comes into your mind that's probably just your mind making stuff up, you just write that into the corner, basically. So that's essentially like a quick breakdown of how the remote viewing process works.
Follow up from Eugene. What can you tell us about spiritual illusions? And is there any connection between the out-of-body experience and life after death?
Spiritual illusions, I guess something I have perceived in human beings is we do have this, unfortunately, innate desire to kind of go towards the negative emotionally. I think, like in news media and things that, can heavily conspiratorial thinking and these kinds of things, we can often become overly negative in our understanding about things. So I think that can become a kind of spiritual illusion. We can start to see things in very, very negative terms. And I think that's somewhat unfortunate. So I do think it's good to sort of, like I mentioned, sort of strip away beliefs as much as we can and try to perceive things as they really are, kind of really test our assumptions and our preconceptions about things, and try to not get dragged into the sort of negative framework of thinking, I guess. What was the second part of the question again?
That was about, I think I may have already erased it. I apologize. I erased it there, but we could get to another one here. Let's go to T-Bone, who is asking, are there hitchhikers in the out-of-body realm?
I'm not sure how you would hitchhike, but no, I haven't encountered anything like that.
All right. Let's go to Contrary One. Have you had any alien or UFO experiences in your out-of-body experience?
I think I already mentioned, no, I haven't had any out-of-body experiences, but like I've seen lights in the sky over Avebury, 8 lights that were doing kind of formations. And I've also had that sense of a sort of energy form that made me kind of literally reach out and kind of touch it. And then as I lifted my hand up, a kind of beam of energy appeared in the sky. I don't know whether you would categorize that as alien or UFO, but you definitely could interpret it in that way. So that's one possibility.
What about paranormally speaking? Have you dealt with a lot of spirits or entities?
I have, but I try to keep, to some degree, an open mind about what they might be. Are they just a part of like my own unconscious mind? Are they genuinely objective? There's a lot of, I'm fascinated by what they could be and what the nature of them could be. But I guess the ones I really focus on are the ones, maybe like I mentioned, the orb that I saw with my friend, where we were both kind of meditating, and this orb appeared, and it was very tangible, opaque green energy, and it stayed there for around 10 minutes. So, and we felt an intense kind of positive energy coming from it. So experiences like that, in terms of entities, I take maybe more seriously, because it's it just had so much more of a kind of tangible reality to it, and my friend saw the same thing. So yeah, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've kind of as I mentioned, had various ghost experiences as well, or apparitions, or whatever you want to call them, things like that. And in my OBEs, I have encountered beings looking very auric, I guess, often sort of many energies and colors within their sort of auric field. So they don't look physical in a sense. There's no kind of discernible features. They just seem to be like a humanoid form of kind of auric energy. That's something that I've also perceived in a lot of OBEs.
All right, let's make up another question here from Eugene. What is the landscape of the astral world? And is the vision the same as here?
In terms of astral world, like I said, I tend to call it the transphysical, and I don't use the old sort of theosophical model about astral planes and etheric bodies and all these kinds of things. The other levels, I try to kind of, I think there is an illusory level, which was kind of mentioned, and I definitely, if you actually go back to the early writings on the astral planes by the theosophists that's essentially become the sort of new age literature of today, like A.E. Powell, for example, he wrote the book literally on like the astral body and the astral planes and that kind of thing. In his writings, there's a focus on that particular level is very illusory and is populated by more kind of shells of psychological aspects of ourselves and different people, and it's kind of it's not an objectively real environment, essentially. So it's very easy to get drawn into sort of delusion and self-delusion and things like that within that particular understanding. So I guess my focus is often on the levels that maybe are related to the afterlife and that kind of thing. Goes back to that question before, actually. It was about near-death experiences and whether near-death experiences and OBEs are related and the afterlife aspect. I do think they are related, and I do think OBEs do suggest some sense of an afterlife. I think that an out-of-body experience is a part of a near-death experience. An out-of-body experience is essentially what the person experiences before they go into the tunnel or before they go to this other level of reality, this sort of afterlife type of reality. I've had a shared death experience where I saw about 141 people who died suddenly in a plane crash, and I saw them all there going through a life reviews, struggling with the reality of what had just happened to them, passing from that reality into like another level. I watched all of that from a distance of about 100 meters, 150 meters, something like that, in this cloudy, misty sort of other level of reality. So some of those experiences, and also I was able to verify that there had been a plane crash. So I had this experience on this other level, and then I was able to verify the details of it as well. So that was a really fascinating experience. But yeah, so I think all of that does suggest there's an afterlife, does suggest that OBEs and NDEs are interrelated as a way to access those kinds of levels.
All right, let's go to Vanessa here. What kind of experiences did you have when visiting Stonehenge?
I actually value Avebury way more than Stonehenge. People don't tend to know Avebury as much. Avebury is actually the biggest stone circle in the world, and is about 20 or so miles from Stonehenge. Stonehenge, unfortunately, has become just a sort of a tourist museum object. They don't even let you into the circle now. You kind of walk around it. I did go to the circle when I was a child, and I have also been on summer solstice and winter solstice, but it's often very crowded with people. I haven't gained a great amount from visiting that particular site, but there are many other stone circles all across the UK and Ireland where I live. So you Avebury in particular, I've had many experiences at. Avebury, I think, is really the spiritual center in terms of the UK. That's where I really feel like there is a very, very important energy, or it's a sacred site, let's say. And it's also more of a living temple in a sense, because there are many pagans living in that, at the Avebury complex. So it's there are many druids in particular who live there.
Broski's asking, is flying in your dreams considered leaving your body in a way?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a different thing. I think dreams are a separate type of experience.
T-Bone's asking, do entities converse with each other during out-of-body experiences?
Yes, I think they do. Yes, I think like I mentioned, the auric figures that I've seen in some environments do seem to have interactions with each other. So yeah.
All right. We're done with audience questions right now. What is the psychological and neurological aspects of out-of-body experiences? What happens?
Well, I've done a lot of research with myself, actually, when I was developing my infraliminal sound technology, which is a technology using infrasound and subliminals to induce the vibrational state for OBEs. It's not binaural beats. People often assume that it's a binaural beat thing, but I developed this technology to help people induce the vibrational state, which is the launch pad for the out-body experience. So when I was doing research into that, we used a lot of neurofeedback, so monitoring what was going on with my brain waves and that kind of thing. And it was interesting because OBEs do seem to arise from many different brain states. There doesn't seem to be a singular one in terms of brain waves. Like you will read, for example, some people saying, oh, you need to be in theta or gamma or delta or these kinds of things. Some of my experiences were even in alpha waves, for example. So it can be very interesting. I think it's kind of a deeper thing. I think it's more to do with activating the brain in a particular way that can lead to inducing the out-of-body experience, or even when the brain isn't active at all, such as in a near-death experience, a cardiac arrest type scenario. So I think it's really whatever leads to this sort of shutdown of the ordinary sensory experience and the ordinary way the brain works. But we do know that things like sensory deprivation, being in a very, very deep state, the temporal lobes being active, for example, there's connections with temporal lobe epilepsy on the psychological, neurological level. Possibly people who do have some kind of temporal lobe epilepsy have more likelihood of having out-of-body experiences or similar type experiences. So there are lots of fascinating areas in terms of the brain and what's going on and that kind of thing. It's not saying that the OBE is all in the brain. It's just that obviously certain things that you do with the brain can trigger an OBE. So
from a scientific level and the study of out-of-body experiences, has anybody really delved into testing the brain through EEG scans or anything like that to see how the brain is reacting to this experience?
Not many people. Like I mentioned, probably the most interesting study is the Canadian study where they used an fMRI scanner, and they found a woman who was able to induce OBEs, and they put her into the fMRI scanner. She induced an OBE or several OBEs while she was in the scanner, and they recorded everything that was going on with her brain and saw the different areas that were lit up. Essentially, her brain acted as if she was moving around and interacting with the world, but you know, she was just laying in an fMRI scanner. There is some suggestion of the temporoparietal junction being important, which is one aspect of one part of the brain that seems to be to do with the body schema, your sense of how you interact with the world, your sense of, you know, how you understand your physical layout, that you're, you know, where your head is and your legs are and your arms and all of that. The temporoparietal junction, if it's manipulated or stimulated, it can distort your sense of where your body is, and that can potentially lead to an out-of-body experience. So there is that aspect. Some research that was done with Ingo Swan by Michael Persinger suggested the occipital parietal junction. There's different parts of the brain that seem to be active in different research that's been done. So again, it suggests that the brain really just acts as if you're having a physical experience, but you're actually just laying down in a particular location. So it's interesting. It's like the brain is kind of reacting to an environment that it's not actually in.
Where do you think consciousness goes during an out-of-body experience?
I think, as someone mentioned in the comments, I think possibly that it's not so much where it goes. I think that maybe consciousness is not even rooted just in the brain anyway. I think it is like literally like a cloud, like cloud as in the computer sense of the word, a computer and a cloud, and it's sort of like there's an interconnection. I don't see it as it's in and out. I see it as kind of like everything is sort of in this interconnected. If it is this quantum reality aspect that I mentioned earlier on, that the entanglement is taking place, then even the sense of where something, even the sense of like movement and location becomes blurred, because you can have instantaneous interaction across an entire universe in the sense with on a quantum level. If that is the case, it's kind of like space and time becomes completely meaningless in a way. So if that is true, then why not consciousness could be existing everywhere all at once, in a sense. So in that way you could kind of move anywhere or be anywhere all at once. So where does it go? It's I think it potentially just goes into a deeper interconnected aspect of our reality. That's what I think is probably going on.
All right, I think we got time for one more question here. Is the astral body real, symbolic, or metaphorical in your opinion?
I think it's more symbolic. I think that the majority of people don't experience it. In research by Carlos Alvarado, for example, he asked thousands of people to describe their out-of-body experiences, and the majority, about 70% of people, didn't experience a second body, an energy body, an astral body. The majority of people experienced a traveling consciousness, so just feeling like a field of vision or a field of perception moving through space. And then a few other people, a sort of smaller percentage, experienced an orb or a kind of like a kind of ball of consciousness, sometimes 360 vision. And then maybe a smaller percentage, a small percentage experienced some kind of secondary body. So I think that suggests to me that the true nature of the out-of-body experience is this traveling consciousness, this ability to move your consciousness to any location and travel through space. And that when you experience other things, I think they're probably psychological constructs. They're probably aspects of how you think about yourself, how you believe yourself to be. And that's what leads people to see a body, or maybe you just need a body in one particular type of experience, like to touch something or etc.
Graham, I want to say a big thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Absolute pleasure to have you on. People can find your books at grahamnichols.com. Coming up in hour 3, Swamp Dweller will kick things off. Then Terry Hall will fill in for Lee Strauss tonight on the Q&A.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
Thank you, Graham. Great pleasure to have you here. Hold on, I got you on mute here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
I hope your avocados this morning are great.
Thank you.
You take care, my friend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right, I'll be right back, everybody. waiting for Terry Hall to get here. All right. I got an interesting story for you guys coming up. Thank you tonight to T-Bone, my man, Ozzy Ange, and Tim Mothman and his goatee for the super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate the love and support. Really do. Here comes the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We really appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to say hello to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. It is Pursuit. Pursuit is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp.
About 5 years ago, I and my older sister went to a nature park, a wetland, so to speak. Of course, we went at night so we could skateboard around because you weren't allowed to. But you know, a 14-year-old trying to look cool in front of her 24-year-old sister is not too uncommon, I guess. Well, we went just around as the sun was setting. For a little bit, we got lost since the park was so big and condensed with thick woods. We were trying to find the bridge, a 20-foot or so bridge so we could hang out just above the rushing river. By the time we got there, the sun was hardly visible over the mountains. I looked around after drinking my water, and here is where the creepy stuff happened. As I looked at the other side of the bridge, I saw a tall, skinny figure. I first shrugged it off like it was a person, maybe a ranger of the park. But then it got on all fours and walked away. It didn't say anything at first, mainly because I thought it was probably a bear or something. I looked back at my sister as we chatted about the boys and all the other things that we would chat about. Then I looked back at the end of the bridge. My sister did too, and we both saw the figure. This time, we both had known that we had seen it, so we couldn't be crazy. At this point, I had totally freaked out. Mind you, it's still not dark out and the sky was purple and orange, so it wasn't like we were seeing things, like when your mind pictures figures in the dark. No, it was right there and getting closer. I told my sister to get the heck out of here. Her going first off the bridge and down the hill. I went second. And as I turned to look at the bridge again, it was 5 feet in front of me and all fours again. It stood there as me and my sister skated off. This isn't the end, unfortunately. I told my sister to head to the main building since there are cameras and lots of light. We skateboarded for what seemed like hours. Every minute seemed to last an eternity. As we finally get to the main building, we finally stop riding our boards. Out of breath and scared, we both looked around. By this time, it was pitch black outside and we could barely see anything. We made a dash to the car, taking a path we have never seen before, but it was outside the park, which made us feel safer. After we got to my sister's Jeep, we both got in, hearts racing and scared out of our minds. We had been trying to leave the gate, but it was locked, meaning we couldn't leave since there was only one way in and out of the park. We got even more scared. We tried everything to get out. We thought about just leaving the car and walking home, but we drove onto the sidewalk and eventually found a way to bypass everything. To this day, I won't go back to those wetlands ever again, even in daylight. Whatever that thing was, I never want to see it again. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm almost 19 now. You can think whatever you want about this story, but it really did happen to me. I and my sister don't even talk about it to this day. Something changed between us. I could feel it after that day.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another creepy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell. Thousands of stories right there for you to listen to anytime you want. It's wonderful. Now, normally we have Lee Strauss coming on in, but he's got the night off. So Terry Hall from the SOR team is going to join us tonight. He has just become a grandpa recently for the first time, packs a great mustache. And Terry, thank you for coming on in tonight.
Howdy. How you doing, Dave?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for asking. How's your holiday season going up north?
Well, we've had about a foot of snow so far. It's been snowing almost 24 hours. So
really?
It's starting to feel a lot like Christmas around here. Let's just be honest.
The last winter that we spent in Michigan before we moved from back there, I remember that the weather forecast was flurries for 24 hours. It snowed for 3 days straight. We were jumping off a second story. My mom and dad's house was two story. Peak of the roof was probably 50 feet off the ground. It was one of these kind of roofs, right? And we were jumping off the peak of the roof into the snowdrifts on the side of the house.
I've never been in snow that deep. Like the deepest I've ever been in is probably 4 feet.
In Utah, up in the mountains, it gets 13, 14, 20 feet deep.
So I got to tell you this. Before the show tonight, sometimes I get warmed up by, playing people's short videos on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah.
And I came across this incredible story that I had to share with you guys tonight. Okay. And I heard it. I got to give full credit to the podcaster and this guy's incredible. He's an ex-Navy SEAL named Mr. Ballin. Okay. So he does this story and I had to look it up. And I'm going to share this story with you because it absolutely blows my mind. It is one of the most controversial yet most researched and cited reincarnation cases in modern history. It's the story of a young boy. Well, he's not so young anymore. He would be, he's born in 1998, 2018, he'd be 20. So he's about 28 years old, 27 years old now. Okay. But this young boy named James Leninger. Okay. So he was born April 10th, 1998. At around 2 years old, he started having these violent recurring nightmares. He'd wake up screaming, Terry, about a plane being shot, on fire, and that he was trapped inside and he crashed into the ocean. And he'd have a toy plane that he'd slam into the ground or on a table or on the couch, and he would scream, "Plane crash on fire. Little man can't get out." Now, these nightmares occurred before he had any significant exposure at all to anything World War II. I mean, he's 2 years old. He's not really going to notice anything. Okay. And let's face it, as parents, we don't really show 2-year-olds war videos. We really, unless you're me or somebody like that who will show, my son at 2 years old a bunch of pro hockey fights. Okay, but who's saying? But his
That's
parents,
normal. That's normal.
yeah, his parents, namely his father Bruce, really started taking an interest in what was happening with his son, because this was becoming not a once in a blue moon occurrence. It was becoming a regular occurrence. Okay. So as time went on and as the boy started to age and his speech started developing, his parents kept on asking him what was happening. They talked to doctors who said, we'll grow out of it. He'll, it's just imagination of a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But his dad saw something more in that. And Bruce started asking him some very specific questions, like what kind of plane he flew. The boy said a Corsair, and that he had taken off from a ship called the Natoma. The boy said that he was shot down by the Japanese and died near Iwo Jima. His best friend was named Jack Larson, and his name, even though his name was James in this lifetime, his name was James there as well. Now, his father went into some serious historical research to try and verify this, okay? So Bruce Leninger became absolutely in awe with what his son was doing. Couldn't figure it out. So this is what he was able to find out, Dad, that is. The USS Natoma Bay operated in the Pacific during Iwo Jima. There was a pilot named James Houston Jr. And when his son would draw, not James Houston Jr., but when Bruce's son would draw his pictures of the airplane or whatever it was, he would sign it James with the number 3 on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here we have a pilot named James Houston Jr. who flew F-4U Corsairs, who was killed March 3rd, 1945, and shot down during a mission near Iwo Jima. A pilot named Jack Larson served on the Natoma Bay, surviving the war. Houston's aircraft was hit in the engine, matching James's repeated emphasis of fire and inability to escape. Some of James's statements were made before his parents uncovered these facts, which is why researchers found this case so compelling. It was investigated by University of Virginia, Dr. Jim B. Tucker, who runs the Division of Perceptual Studies. They built upon earlier frameworks developed by Dr. Ian Stevenson, and Dr. Tucker noted the age of onset, 2 to 3 years old, fits classic reincarnation patterns. The death was violent and sudden, which often correlates with stronger recall. The memories faded as James grew older, which is another common feature of near-death experiences, as well as reincarnation. Now, additional things that they found was that James had a strong emotional reaction when he saw World War II aircraft. He displayed advanced aviation knowledge unusually early, showed deep fear tied specifically to burning and crashing. The nightmares stopped when he turned about 5 or 6. There were no claimed birthmarks linked to Houston's wounds, which some other reincarnation cases include, but not all do. So this case stands out for a couple of reasons. Okay, reincarnation researchers believe the Leninger Houston case is unusual because it involves a named, verifiable historic figure, a modern day Western family, military records that match up specific claims, and a child way too young initially to easily fabricate technical details. I love this story, man. What's your thoughts?
There are so many, I mean, basically documented, provable occurrences of reincarnation. I recall one about a kid who recalled who murdered him in a previous life and walked the law basically right to the guy's front door where there was evidence of the murder.
That
But
was in India. Yes.
yeah,
I
that
remember
was in
that
India.
case.
But what about Dorothy Eady? We're talking about like generational reincarnation where you die and then you're reborn almost immediately, right? Dorothy Eady pointed out so many things in Egypt, discoveries that were no one even knew about, and she would walk and say, I think she was a priestess of Osiris. That's millennial. She knew languages that had been extinct. And she discovered all of this stuff. She was in a previous life, she was an Egyptian priestess. So, I mean, it can go on for millennia, thousands and thousands of years. But that kind of stuff, I fully believe in that kind of stuff, man. But what trips me out about it, like with Dorothy Eady, it went on for her entire life. She was
Right.
able to have recall for her entire life. But with a lot of these cases with the kids, you'll find it about in that same time frame when I guess when the child mind finally starts to like fully shut down and they're formed around the age of 4 or 5, that's when the memories stop or the occurrences that may cause them discomfort stop and they just start their life at that point. But it's, isn't it weird how that kid was signing his name James 3 instead of James Jr.? I mean, because he was the third one technically. But that kind of stuff, yeah, I fully believe in that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, I've talked to a couple of different priests, actual priests who 100% believe in reincarnation. Well, how many cases they have documented about that in the Vatican down there in them catacombs? You know what I mean?
Oh, I bet you they know. Oh, I bet you they know.
With the way that the world is now, would you want to come back next time?
I'm sorry, you muffled up on me.
I said, with the way that the world is today, and with the way that it's headed, when we cash out this time and go to the next level, are you going to bring your e-ticket back and come back this way, or are you going to hang out over there for a while?
Oh, good question. Good question. I don't know if I want to do childhood again. I really don't. Because if the idea is you reincarnate to become, because you have to go through these levels of spirituality that they talk about, I really wouldn't want to come back if I had to live in a violent home or an abusive home or no home at all. I think after this lifetime, I don't need any more humbling.
I've talked to somebody, I met her quite a long time ago. As a matter of fact, somebody that we were talking about reincarnation, and this particular person absolutely believes in reincarnation, but she's of the thought that we choose our journey before we come back. Right? So
Right.
you kind of map out what you're going to do when you're here, whether you're going to be here and suffer for a while, or whether you're going to do like the rock star life or whatever it is. You're choosing what you're going to do before you even get here, so you know what time you're going to check out. You even know if you're going to commit suicide or not, which touched on a different thing of that the number one cardinal sin that you can commit in most religions is you taking your own life.
Yes.
You can't come back and ask for forgiveness once you're not here anymore. So the subject gets really, really deep, really fast when you really start breaking it down.
Very true. Very true. There is a controversial part to this as well. Okay, we got about 3 minutes. I'll start this. This one fascinates me, and I debated whether or not to use this one, but sometimes you just have to get it out there. But in the 24 years since 9/11, there are a number of children who have come back with nightmares about what's gone on. So, just to read a couple here. Okay. If everybody remembers the falling man from the building, the beautiful picture, I mean, it's so scary but beautiful, where he's falling. A young boy repeatedly spoke of jumping from a tall building because of smoke and fire. Demonstrated extreme fear of tall buildings, would not go into them. Sirens, airplanes, absolute fear. He used phrases like the building broke and I couldn't breathe. Parents reported that they never exposed their child at the young age to anything to do with 9/11 footage at the time. As the child aged, the memories, of course, reportedly diminished. But man, I mean, there are so many of these stories that are out there. Here's another one. This other child recalled being a firefighter. He insisted that he used to be a firefighter who died helping people in New York. He drew pictures of burning towers with stick figures wearing helmets. The child had recurring nightmares involving collapsing buildings and loud roaring sounds. He expressed sadness on September 11th each year without understanding why. And then he claims that he had friends who never were able to go home.
You know what, dude? What really freaks me out about all of this kind of stuff is if your consciousness is hanging out that long and it gets downloaded into another being, right? Are we all just NPCs on some dude's hard drive someplace? And when he
Right?
hits defrag, some of these NPCs that are just floating around get automatically reloaded into a new character because you can only have so many characters in the game or something. I mean, that kind of, I mean, everybody's always talking about consciousness and UFOs and the connection. Consciousness being re-uploaded into something else. That is, I mean, that's the kind of subject that makes my head hurt to even think about, man.
Yeah, I don't understand it, my man. I really, really don't understand it. And it's absolutely creepy. And when we get back from the break here, I'm going to read a couple more of these because this is just kind of creeping me out. It really is.
You and me both. I don't like thinking about things like that, Dave.
I know, but it's
And-
just so
But
interesting.
you know what? It could tie into something else as well, because so many people that lived or have been to the Uinta Basin have come away with this. They call them hitchhikers. It's not just there, but it's very prevalent there. You know very well that I'm one of those people.
Hold that thought, Terry. We're going to go to break right now. Terry Hall filling in for Lee Strauss on the Q&A. We'll be right back.
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
gonna run and grab a carbonated beverage real quick.
All right, we are clear.
I'll be right back, Dave. I'm gonna just run right
Sounds
over there.
good. All right. There. 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 Jules, I'll show you what I'm quickly doing for you here, dear. Because you asked for it.
Are you making Jules a shirt?
She wants an SOR hobo shirt.
See, man, that's another cool thing about Dave's swag.
It's not ugly.
Swag on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Need a mustache shirt? Tell Dave.
Yep. Now let's choose the colors. Black heather, blood. That's nice. Dark gray. Nice.
Jules, this UFO. Yeah, wait, I gotta grab it. Actually levitates the cow. It's pretty cool.
Oh, where did you get that?
I found it at just our little drugstore that we've got in town up on the shelf, man.
Right.
But it was so fun. I couldn't leave it there. I did ask the shopkeep, though, and yes, we still have that kind of thing where I live, if he could grab a couple more of those for me. And he said, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So Santa might be shoving one down your chimney come Boxing
I
Day.
hope so. I hope so.
We know another person that this guy's got everything. He's so hard to even think about what you could get the dude for Christmas, but something like this fits the bill perfect, you know?
Hold on here.
Yeah, UFO cow abduction. It even came with the cow abduction book, Dave.
That's lovely. That looks good, those shirts, eh?
I actually like that. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I'd buy
Jules,
that.
what do you think? I need your thumbs up. Waiting to see Jules' reaction.
What color, Jules? If you had to pick a color, what color would you pick? And remember, the rainbow does end in my backyard sometimes.
I gotta go back here for a second. I gotta put. Oh, we got 2 minutes. Where is my art?
Actually, the ghost needs like an SOR tattoo on his forearm, right?
This what's kind of cool is we can put our logo in at the back of the shirt here.
I always think that looks really tight like that.
Oh yeah. Oops, wrong. Save. There we go. Do I have Jules' thumb of? I love it. Yes. Yes, I did well. Dave did well.
I actually have a friend up here who has one of those. Well, she has it in. They do embroidery, and I was thinking about one of the companies that I worked for before whatever truck we were driving, they'd actually put it in embroidery on a jacket for us. So I've been. I got to think out of the box for you guys when it comes to the holiday season.
Oh my God, I can't spell.
Did any of you guys in the lovely audience this evening? And by the way, hello everybody. I've missed you all. Did you guys see that thing about Spielberg?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next, Terry.
Oh, all right, cool beans.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have 10 seconds. Thank you, T-Bone. Thank you, Ozzy Ange. Thank you, Tim Mothman and your goatee for the great super chats tonight. Really appreciate it. And we're going to get going right now. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio's Q&A. My name is Dave Scott. We are joined by a gentleman who has a mustache of a lifetime. We call him Terrence Hall around here. How you doing, Terry? Thank you for joining us. I'll be right with you momentarily. We want to remind everybody that if you missed most of this show or others, our archives are always free on YouTube, any major podcast network, and we're going to keep them free. Why? Because there's too much expense in life. So you get us for free. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. He's Terry Hall. I'm Dave Scott. We're continuing the Q&A, and right before the break, we're talking about reincarnation, children remembering memories of a previous lifetime, Terry. And we were talking about some of these that happened on 9/11. I want to go over a couple more of these because they're actually pretty emotional.
I mean, it ties right in with the theme of your show this evening, by the way.
Yeah.
Dave, you know.
One child reportedly became extremely overwhelmed and tearful when visiting Ground Zero years later. The child said, "This is where I died." Displaying strong emotional distress not typical for their age, the parents described it almost like a recognition response rather than curiosity. Another had a child claiming to have worked in a high office with computers and windows everywhere. The child mentioned elevators being stuck and they couldn't get down, and smoke started filling the hallways. Would reenact evacuation scenes while playing with toys. The parents later realized their child's descriptions really loosely matched what happened of the World Trade Center office layouts. And the final one that we'll talk about is this one, where a toddler came out saying, "The plane hit my building. The plane hit my work." Using unusual language that a toddler would to their parents, it caught the parents' eye. The child showed panic responses every time it saw an airplane flying overhead, whether it was a Cessna or a Boeing 737. Parents would state that the child had never been shown news footage of that fateful day, nor why would they?
Yeah.
However, the child's statement stopped by age 6.
I've been fortunate enough to, throughout my life, my son was born, my firstborn. I was 21. My last one, I was well into my 30s. And watching them, like when I was a young man raising children, you know, with life the way that it was, you just didn't have the time to pay attention. But as you grow older, you start paying attention to, especially when they're infants. And I know very well that there are definitely altered dimensions, more than one dimension here. And whether that's where we go to when we leave here, or if we just float around, I don't know what we do, man. But I can tell you for a fact that infants, young kids are tapped into something else, man. It's there's something else there before they jack into Earth fully. They're in between, like it's like being in the in between. I mean, I hate to be so cliche as to quote Stranger Things, but it's like there's an in between there or something. What do you think about that?
I don't know where we go. I'm sure we've been there before. We just don't recognize it. I think there is something more out there. I know you're a God guy, Terry, and I am too. You know, I
What
think there
would the
is.
benefit be to come back and torment a child as such until they actually jack in here? What I mean,
Well,
are you trying to tie up loose ends or something, or what's
no,
the point?
no. I think what it is. I think what it is that the spirit doesn't know. Okay, because it happened so traumatically. Whether it was a car accident or 9/11 or whatever else it might be.
And that's the thing is, I mean, boiling it down to religion, Dave, it, by the way that some religions think, the people that stepped out of that building to save themselves from burning to death and took their own life would be doomed, right? According to most religions, anyway. But
Mhm.
it's not holding true in this because you got firefighters that are coming back, you've got pilots that are coming back, you've got people that stepped out of buildings coming back. It it doesn't cross platforms very well. And it doesn't to me it doesn't make sense unless unless you just got jacked into a new player's piece. That's the only way that this makes sense to me. How
Yeah.
else could it happen?
Well, and that's why I said I think what happens is sometimes things happen with such a traumatic reaction that the human soul maybe doesn't have time to react or to say, okay, this is the next step or whatever.
So
And
then
it's
it is
looking to get back in to try and, like you said, maybe fix things that happen on this side.
you know, that one guy did the experiments and was weighing bodies as they passed on. He was recording that we lost a certain amount of weight when we actually expired.
Was that
And
21 grams, I believe.
yeah, 21 grams, I think it was. Does that 21 grams, is that our consciousness? Is your soul your consciousness? Is it man, this subject gets way too deep, dude. Way too deep. I need like mixed oxygen to take a dive this deep.
And you almost need a CPAP to do this conversation.
No, because I ain't sleeping through this one. You need a CPAP when you sleep. When you dive this deep, you got to mix a little bit of nitrogen into your oxygen so you don't get the bends, buddy.
Right?
This kind of subject gets me the bends because I'm ready to jump out and swim for the surface.
It is kind of creepy to think of. It really is that I mean, as a parent, you get locked in because you want to be able to protect your child. You want to be able to, tell them everything's going to be all right. But if they are having zero control of someone else's thoughts,
Yeah,
then
and where is this bubble of thoughts hanging out for 20 years before it gets sucked into something so it can
exactly.
relive part? I mean,
But Terry, it's also the same thing. I'm going to put it in the same category. Many may not agree, but people who get organ donations, where
that have, yeah,
all of a sudden, maybe you've never eaten McDonald's in your life, but gosh darn it, that one Sunday morning, out of nowhere, you're starting to crave a Big Mac.
mhm.
And I'm literally 7 days away from a Big Mac. So happy that McDonald's is opening in my town, right? or all of a
They
sudden they
just
have
brought
the
the nigger
urge.
right back, and I went down and got one, and I swear to you, I could not. I got about halfway through it and had to set it down. I just I don't eat that way. You know that I don't eat fast food very often. Where I live, we live out in the country, and we eat like we live in the country. And how you fawn over Taco Bell and McDonald's just cracks me up, especially when up there. You got a much better place that's available to you all the time, Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons going downhill.
Oh, it has. Oh, bummer.
So I'm looking up some stories here. Okay, here's one for you. This comes from Dr. Paul Pearsall, a neuropsychologist, where a middle-aged woman received the heart of a young male donor. After the surgery, she developed an intense craving for McDonald's chicken nuggets, fast food she previously disliked. She later learned that her donor had lived on chicken nuggets. She also adopted more impulsive behaviors than she had ever had before. Interpretation of this all was that it was possible emotional memory association or neurochemical shift. Here's one. Another one from Dr. Pearsall. A man who absolutely could not stand classical music received a donor heart. Post-transplant, he all of a sudden felt drawn to classical compositions. It helped calm him, made him more introspective in his activities. Later, he discovered the donor was a classical musician. He described the change as not learned, it just appeared.
Well, there is a big difference between, well, learned behaviors, but when it comes to something like that, it makes you wonder how much of us is actually programmed into our DNA, our actual DNA. So when you're mixing that DNA, even though you might be of a similar type, so that you can transplant the organ into said person. It makes you wonder on them stringy steps, how much of that violin is programmed into that, or how much is the beef tallow that the McDonald's cook their fries in programmed into that strand of DNA. That our bodies are amazing, and we take them such for granted, and they do such really cool and awesome things like that. Transplant a heart of a classical musician into somebody who previously really intensely disliked classical music, and then all of a sudden, the food thing I can kind of understand. I mean, you are what you eat, right? But I guess you are what you listen to and what you do too, apparently.
Well, I'll give you a couple more. A recipient who previously enjoyed the odd drink, shall we say, developed a sudden aversion to beer and spirits, couldn't stand the taste anymore. Why? Well, this one, I mean, maybe you're reaching a little bit on this one, okay, because the donor apparently had become a recovering alcoholic, stopped drinking for years. The recipient described feeling physically uncomfortable when drinking, so quit themselves. Now, the interpretation from the doctors, and where it's kind of loosely fitting on this, is that it could have been medication related, but the correlation does raise eyebrows.
Was it a liver transplant? No.
It didn't say.
Teasing. No, that would have been way too easy to pick out if it would have been that. They could have just chalked it up to where, hey, we had to replace your liver. You're not drinking anymore. But man, it makes you wonder.
Now, a young girl received the heart of a young deceased child. Post-transplant, the young girl was healing beautifully, but all of a sudden, some of her behaviors started to change. She all of a sudden had new fears of things that she'd never feared before. New emotional responses where she would cry for no reason where she hadn't cried before. nightmares featuring unfamiliar people. Her parents later learned that the donor had died violently. Some fears mirrored the donor's manner of death. Now, it's important to note in this, pediatric cases are often highlighted because children are less likely to confabulate intentionally. But the thing that I like about these stories, especially this one, is it's almost like every organ has its own brain that stores memory, like its own memory card, Terry.
Well, not only that, but physiological responses as well, because one of the people in your chat, Flat Sixer, also brought up that sometimes recipients also can transfer like a peanut allergy after a transplant as well, which, I mean, it's all tied together. But makes you wonder, like, okay, the reincarnation thing where the entire bubble gets transplanted into somebody, that's one thing. But I mean, I've heard that, and it makes sense to me that we're just a clump of cells, and the neutrons and electrons and everything's floating around, and we're freely exchanging that with the atmosphere and the world around us all the time. I mean, constant exchange. I mean, the desk isn't solid, right? We think it is, but the desk's not solid. It's just a bunch of stuff stuck together somehow. So how much of the consciousness is all of the consciousness in every little piece of our body, or is it just whatever part of that body is in that chakra that controls that part of your being gets transferred with that? Oh, Dave, you're making my head hurt, man.
Well, I got two more before we move on here. The second one I'm saving. It's actually number 9 out of my list of 10, but I'm going to make it number 10 because it's kind of funny.
Okay.
All right. So here's number 10, which is actually number 9. All right. Where did I put it here? Oh, wrong window. Where'd it go? Hold on. I've got too many windows open right now. Okay. I found it here. So this person who received a donor organ started using different vocabulary and expressions in the way they talked, using phrases they'd never used before. They developed new speech patterns. Now, families later noticed the similarities to the donor's speech habits, often dismissed as coincidence, but repeated in multiple interviews. Now, this one I struggle with, and let me tell you why, Terry. The one thing Mrs. SOR has told me over the 11 years of doing this show, because we're in year 11 now, is when I'm on the radio, I've all but lost my Canadian accent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because most of the time, for about 80 to 90% of our audience, lives in the United States. So I try really hard to not do the oot and a boot kind of thing. Okay. Or go to the rink, and, let's go watch a game, or shut your hole, you hoser, right? Like, I do catch myself saying A. That one's hard, right? But still, I've seemed to have lost a lot of my Canadian accent when I'm on the radio. And it just happens.
Well, yeah, when you say about, you don't say a boot. Now, right. Tim, on the other hand, young Tim, when you had him around, like he was like thick Canadian, bro. He's like Canadian bacon and then some.
oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You got that right. Hey? But so this one, I don't really, this story, I don't really buy just because of the fact that I think your vocabulary changes around your company.
Oh yeah, it does 1,000%.
Right.
You've talked to me at various stages of consciousness with me, and you know that I've lived all over the world, all over the country. And it depends on the day and how tired I am to what accent you're going to pick up when you call me.
You got that right. Now, here's the funny one is we got about 90 seconds left. So this person goes in for a transplant. Transplant psychologist interviews them afterwards. The recipient, all of a sudden, started getting real horny, shall they say. Started changing their romantic preferences, new emotional attractions, new fantasies. They learned the donor had a very different type of relationship history. The recipient described the changes as raw emotional instincts, not thoughts.
All right, dude. That goes into the one more deep into the subject. Nurture versus nature, Dave.
Right?
How
Crazy.
much? And you know what? When it comes to living a brutal life, or living in, if you're raised in the neighborhood or if you were raised uptown, right? Can you really take somebody from the neighborhood and put them in, let's do a Changing Places, Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd kind of thing? And, you might be able to take the neighborhood out of the kid, but you never take the kid out of the neighborhood, or however that works out.
Very true.
Yeah. This whole subject just makes my head hurt, Dave.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The good part about it is you get to rest now because we're going to wrap this thing up here in just a few seconds. I think we've pounded on your brain a little bit too much tonight, but I want to say a big thank you, Terry, for filling in for Lee Strauss tonight. It is always a pleasure to have you on this show. We got to do this a little bit more often. I like it when you're on the air.
Oh, I like these deep-ended conversations, man. Now you're going to have me pondering stuff all weekend. Here, I thought I was going to relax this weekend, but
we say
Dave.
Terry and hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, and the Space Travelers Club. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Good job, Terry. Your mustache was on par for tonight. Hold on. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Bring your microphone up a little bit. Try and...
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Gotcha.
Sometime this mic, this boom. Time to get a new one pretty soon.
Hey, did you Get a haircut?
Oh. I just like
If you're in our audience, I do have an important announcement as soon as I face you guys. I have an important announcement to make.
what kind of news drop are you going to give him this evening? What little tidbit has Dave got up his sleeve tonight?
Well, this
Can
one
you do like Bullwinkle and pull like your whole sleeve off and, nothing up the sleeve? Presto.
Hold on.
The one thing about the people in your audience, Dave, in the chat, is you guys are deep, deep thinkers. I have the chat family here is just amazing. And everybody genuinely cares about each other in this whole family. Raven. You got somebody in the chat, Raven's Rabbit Hole, and I'm dealing with this guy, Justin, in New Orleans. He's the Santeria guy.
Yes.
And he was talking about, he gave me instructions for this thing, called the white bath. And she's talking about programming intention into the what you're intaking into your body, like water.
Right.
Our bodies are just some amazing things, man. Like talking things into existence and the power of positive thought.
Agreed.
Reincarnation and transferring stuff just from a piece of your body from one person to another. Yeah.
All right. I want to have a quick chat with our YouTube audience here and our social media audience. Over the last couple of weeks, if you haven't quietly heard, we have decided, unfortunately, due to business reasons, to part ways with Sweet Robbie G. And it was a very, very tough choice on my end. Business-wise, SOR is not going or trending right now the way I wanted it and needed it to go. And, we're in a complete rebuild behind the scenes of everything from social media. And unfortunately, the way it kind of went with Rob is I had to be truthful with him. And I just said I just couldn't do it anymore. Okay. I did pay Rob to do the show, and I just couldn't afford to keep that going. And so for the time being, I want to make sure that everybody knows out there, you're hearing it from me. This is not a personal matter between Rob and myself. This was completely a business financial matter. Rob is a great broadcaster. I am still subscribed to his channel, The Social Dig. He does good programming. Okay, so if you guys haven't subscribed to his channel, please do so. Okay, because he's a good dude. I am going to be making an announcement on social media as well for that because this bothered me. Didn't want to have to do it, but it's not just this channel it is many, 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 many channels in our genre that are absolutely getting shadow banned, and
They're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, Dave.
yeah, and it's affecting a lot of what we do. And when I say we, I'm not saying me, it's a lot of different channels. I was talking to a friend of mine, you guys, he's been on the show, Carl Crusher. He's got over 3 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. And he's gone from getting tens of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of views, down to struggling to get a couple thousand.
Mm-hmm.
And I use Carl as my litmus test, okay, because he is so knowledgeable with YouTube and everything. And it's just tough when you're trying to build things and you're trying to make things work. And when you have a great team like we do, you know, behind the scenes, you guys don't see the family that's involved with this. And I couldn't hold Rob back from doing what he wants to do. He wants to be a voice and an influencer in this community, which I think is good for him. He's got a great voice and a very smart opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sucks.
Guys, I will attest to this 1,000%. This wasn't personal in any way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
Dave has really been run over the roughshod over this one, you guys. So from the bottom of our heart, the bottom of my heart, I'm backing Dave up 1,000% on this one. We love Rob to death. It is what it is.
Contrary one, that was the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall, who's passed away. He passed away about a year and a half ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the meantime and in between time, I do not plan on at the moment or for a while filling in the weekend shows. I need to concentrate on getting the radio side going more. I need to concentrate more on getting the social media aspect, more videos done and everything. And, you know, it's not just on YouTube, it's TikTok and everything. And
actually, Dave should have a little sign put up right now saying, you know, how when people refab something or they're remodeling something, they always have that little sign that says, "Pardon my dust." Dave ought to be having a "Pardon my dust" little sign there somewhere, because that's what he's doing right now.
So I have to figure out, I will be running archives and past shows on Saturday and Sunday. I just have to figure out and learn how to do that, because I'm having to learn a lot of things. And a lot of these changes, guys, started when Tim got ill. Okay. And no, I'm not blaming Tim at all. Tim is one of my best friends, and I've had to take on, once again, more responsibility on things that I've never had to take on before, like editing videos and, you know, phone calls and helping schedule interviews and everything like that. So we are going to also, you know, like give an example with the, you know, a couple weeks ago where we got kicked off YouTube for a couple of days. That scared me, you know, and now we have to look at figuring out other platforms that we use. And it really sucks because you don't want to use too many platforms, because it thins out your audience and thins out your viewership. But on the flip side, we may have to look at adding one or two just for the safety of our archives.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
11 years worth of shows would be a national tragedy if we lost all of that. I've told you before, I think you ought to back all of that up and send it to David Marler. He deserves a copy of all of it. He's the one building the big archive.
Right. So I just wanted to give you guys the heads up that when you don't hear any Sweet Robbie G shows this weekend or anything like that, that's the reason why. And I have to get the weekends kind of sorted out, but I need to take time and really focus on the business side of everything right now and making things better. I really do. So I apologize to you. Not a popular decision on my part, but one that I had to make.
But now this is where everybody can like come into play too.
Mm-hmm.
What would you guys like to see on SOR? You have a particular subject in mind? I mean, that's how we stay relevant. We make sure that we take care of the people who listen to you. So make us some suggestions and we'll put them in the old hat and see what we can toss around. Fanny packs. Oh, that's the way to end it, Dave. I'm going to get out of here, Bossaroni. And
All right,
I will chat at you this weekend sometime. Guys, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure again, Dave. Thank you, and have a great rest of your night.
And
happy holidays to everybody.
I'm going to be signing off here, too. Thank you to T-Bone, my man, Ozzy Ange, Tim Mothman, and his goatee. You guys have a great weekend. I will be back on Monday, where my guest will be MUFON Board of Director Bob Spearing. We're going to take a look at 2025 MUFON UFO sightings in review, and it's going to be a great show. So you guys go enjoy your weekend. Stare up at the stars if you get an opportunity. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, leave a comment after. And
I love it when you rewind the year. That's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. Now I can talk because I finally got the hair out of my mouth. But yeah, that's what I would do. Just enjoy.
Police Navidad to everybody. Ciao for now.
Dirty Filth is busy this weekend. He's out of town, so there will not be a Dirty Filth show. But we'll talk to you guys all tomorrow or on Monday. Okay, guys? Much love. If you need anything, feel free to message me on Facebook, DM or X or wherever. I will be there. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Take care.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.